Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. We start our video with a story of gardening revenge against the neighbors who brought trouble to our OP. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Thanks for the free water, neighbor. My neighbors installed a sprinkler system which they run for 20 to 30 minutes per zone, and it hits my yard. During the installation process, their cheap butt company poked a hole in our system. They also ran a drain from their downspout into our yard. Literally, we had a PVC pipe going from their downspout into our grass. Our side has basically been a flood since. We can't use our sprinklers, they won't admit they broke ours, and won't address the runoff. After watching them water my mud spot for like 6 months, I said F it. I built a 24x1 garden bed and filled it with manure. They live downwind of us and watched them have to smell it the whole weekend on their brand new patio escape. They just refinished. I built it right on the edge of the property line. This morning, rather than watch them water my mud trench, they watered my vegetable garden. Thanks for the free water, bees. And F no, you aren't getting any of my tomatoes. Fixing the hole they poked is a 10-minute project, but they should be accountable. And our second story. Kanyes Rails. I worked in a loading dock for a department store and it was dank in there. In the dungeon sense of the word. All rat traps and strip lighting. The floor would be filthy the day after you cleaned it, just from the dust off the boxes and stock. The manager of the clothing section, let's call him Kanye, was a very bad man. He would bully the employees who spoke English as a second language, and they would come down to the dock to escape him and cry. This would happen weekly. He had a friend in the HR department and hung out with the store manager on the weekend, so no matter what heat was thrown his way, he would always escape it. One day, I was busy putting excess stock back onto a truck. I find a couple of clothing rails that have not been cling wrapped. Now, if these clothes were ever going to be in sellable condition ever again, they need to be wrapped. And this is obvious to anyone with a working set of eyes that aren't located up their own butthole. So, I waste the truck driver's time wrapping them myself. When he leaves, I call up Kanye and let him know that his staff need to wrap the rails, which they all do. Strife ensues. K. I've never heard that we have to wrap the rails if we're sending them back. That's ridiculous. Me. It's how it's always been done. If not, the stock will be impossible to sell. K. It's excess stock. We're not selling it. If you're so precious about it, you can wrap it yourself. Me. It's not my job to wrap stock from another department, and I don't have time to. Also, we might not be selling it, but it may be transferred to another store. K. Well, I've never heard of this. So I'm going to contact the warehouse and see if you're not just making stuff up. I don't get it. We're not even selling it anyway. 20 minutes pass and he calls up and tells me that he spoke to the warehouse supervisor. We, in fact, don't have to wrap the rails. I'm perplexed. So in my break, I call up myself. The warehouse supervisor has not received a call from anyone from our store. The first act of malicious compliance begins now. To the next truck driver's amusement, I fill his vehicle with rails of clothes cling wrap free. Some clothes fall on the ground and are immediately filthy. Side note, this department store also does not wash dirty clothing stock, much to my chagrin. Anyway, truck leaves and sure enough, I get a furious call from the supervisor. I tell him the situation, but he's still angry at me for not covering for Kanye. I take it on the chin and forward on his complaint. This dilutes itself into a small, timid note that Kanye reads at the end of the day instructing his team to wrap their clothing rails. They all do. He's the one who didn't. The week following, Kanye had 15 unwrapped rails in the dock. I give him a call about it. He screams and swears at me, explaining how extremely busy he is. He takes 2-hour lunch breaks, and that I should do something for once and wrap them myself. All I can do is wrap the rails, and luckily the truck driver at the time was chill and he helped me out. However, these rails are given the premium service and are wrapped so tight that sunlight will never touch the contents within. Kanye appears in the elevator suddenly, but luckily, he doesn't even know how to wrap a rail, so he thinks we're just doing a regular job of it. He grumbles, finally, and pushes an unwrapped rail out of the elevator. It slowly rolls across the dock floor towards us, and he's gone. That one was wrapped the most. I get a call from the most livid warehouse supervisor, and I tell him that I had to wrap the rails because the same guy refuses to do it. Now he's savvy to the situation and calls Kanye directly. He reams him for making the dock staff do the job of another department and wasting time, and he explains that he's sending the stock back to be rewrapped. The truck arrives. Kanye pulls out the first rail and slashes at the cling wrap like an angry 12-year-old boy. He managed to slice a $150 dress up in the process. Sad ending, but he made his staff rewrap the rails and still doesn't know how. And he still has his job. Amazing how the most useless people manage to get in power, and those around them suffer for it. And our next story. Management material. The men in my family have been blessed or cursed with premature aged hair. Whether this is premature balding, graying, or both, we start showing signs of being a mature male in our hair in our early teens at our latest. On top of this, I'm a teacher and have been told that this gives me a very commanding posture when I'm talking to people. I'm explaining this because I've been confused for a manager at most places that I work because people assume the older male is a manager. I don't work at Lowe's. I've never worked at Lowe's. And in my life, I've probably only been to this Lowe's like 5 times. I'm currently at Lowe's in search of items to build a pet project of mine, a massive D20 over 2 feet in diameter that can be thrown around and not cause physical damage if a child's hit. As I'm discussing things like different foams to use for the sides, different types of skeletal support if stuffing would help or hurt, and how to support the corners, I'm steadily gaining more and more Lowe's employees around me as they ask each other for their different experiences. About 5 minutes go by, and while they do their best to assist me, we finally get to the point that their idea well is run dry. Eventually, I realize that they don't feel comfortable leaving without me giving them permission to go away. Thank you for your help, guys. I think I've got everything I need from you. Now I'll have to make some of my own decisions, I state more or less, letting them relax and disappear into various parts of the store, like the chained phantoms they are. Finally comes an exasperated voice, which was housed by an irate woman who was a haircut away from being a photographic example of a Karen. Before I can say anything, this woman comes towards me in a huff, literally dragging one of the store employees by his sleeve. This poor college-age boy, who'd probably thought that a job at Lowe's wouldn't add to his stress level when he was going to college, gives me a look of someone who thinks he's about to be executed. I don't know what that woman had said to him, but he was clearly reconsidering all of his life choices up to that point. "Sir, I want you to know that your employee," she states, tugging on the boy's shirt, "has been disrespectful and completely incompetent." This caused an aha moment for both myself and the employee. I thought I'd said or done something to annoy this woman and she was going to complain about me to the nearest employee, and the employee thought she was bringing him to her husband to get a secondary tongue lashing. Ma'am," the boy started, which drew daggers from the woman's eyes. But before he continued, I raised my finger at him and gave him the same face I give my students when we both know they're being stupid. "You'll have your time to talk in a moment. I'll handle this for now," I state before turning to the Karen. "I'm sorry that you had a bad time, ma'am. I'll handle this situation from here. If you need further assistance, please feel free to go up to one of the front desks and explain your needs to them. They'll get you some further assistance." Finally, she states, practically preening on the fact that she's ruined someone's day. With a flip of her hair, she then marched out of the aisle the 3 of us were occupying. I wait until she turns the corner before looking at the employee. "We both know that I don't work here, right?" He nods, unsure of what's going to happen. I shake my head and roll my eyes. "Welcome to retail. Take a small 5-minute break and hopefully she'll be gone before you're back on the floor." I then give him a grin. "That's an order from your manager." I could see the weight disappear from his shoulders as he takes a deep breath. "Half-inch PVC pipe?" I ask, having forgotten where I was instructed to go from the last conversation I had. "2 aisles over that way," he says, pointing. "Thanks," I respond before walking away and hoping I left the employee with a slightly better day. You did a good thing by helping that guy out, don't get me wrong, but the Karen still needed to be reminded she can't assault people without repercussions. And our third story. That's the number of death. I'm not paying that. I work in a new age store. You see all kinds in there, from people who want nice-smelling incense to people who genuinely believe buying chunks of rose quartz and red candles with "come to me" emblazoned on them will make their soulmate appear. I'll admit I don't know much about metaphysical stuff beyond the basics. I don't believe in most of what I sell, but I'm good at BS and have gotten by far nearly a year without yet memorizing which stones will make you rich and which stones will help your kids' ADD. So once in a while, when a customer comes in with advanced knowledge and I have to wing it until I look up whatever they're talking about and it turns out to be an actual thing, then I add to my reluctant pool of metaphysical wisdom for the next time. Take the lady who hated the number 4. She was your typical older hippie sort, frizzy graying hair, billowing clothing, sandals, smelled mostly of patchouli. She purchased a wind chime, 2 rocks, and 2 packets of incense for her heart chakra. Me. That'll be $22.04, please. Hippie lady, who had been opening her wallet, froze and abruptly shook her head. Ring it up again. So I did. Me. $22.04. The hippie lady smacked her palms on the table and stared at me. I'm not paying that. That's the number of death. Me. 2 plus 2 equals 4, and 4 cents. No. But it's $22, and how can your register even let that be a price? I'm not paying that. Do you need to purchase everything at once? We could maybe split the sale up, or you could buy another rock for $1. Hippie lady. No, I have to buy 5 items together. Me. Well, how about you make $1 and change donation to the Homeless Cats Fund? I'll just add it to the sale total. Hippie lady agreed to that idea, and all was well afterwards. I had no idea what she was even talking about with those numbers until I Googled evil death number and learned that apparently 4 and combinations of numbers that equal 4 are considered to be very unlucky in Feng Shui, and 5 is a better number. Since then, I've used this wisdom to impress a few other customers when 4 comes up in their total, and I convince them to buy an extra item to avoid the number of death. And our last story. My sister has 14 kids. It's as chaotic and nightmarish as you can imagine. Usually, she never asks to come over to my place because it's a nightmare to travel with 14 kids to come visit their auntie, who lives 5 hours away. If we're having a gathering, it's always me who's traveling to their place. I don't really mind. We only meet a few times a year. A few years ago, I bought my dream house with my husband. My sister asked to host my nephew's 3rd birthday party at my house. She wants to use the big backyard, grill, and pool at my home. There are roughly 50 people who are invited. I said no, and she called me selfish and an a-hole. Her kids have never been to my house, and I prefer it that way. Her kids are not well behaved, except for the oldest 3, and my house is not child-proof. The pool seems like a huge liability. I don't want children drowning on my property. It just seems like a recipe for disaster. She brought up the fact that she hosted Christmas at her house for the past 10+ years, but I don't think it's fair to compare this to that. We meet at her house instead of our parents' because she has 14 kids to herd around, so it's really more out of convenience to her. Every year for the past 10 years, I buy dessert enough to feed 25 people, so I've done my part with the food arrangements. That's 8 apple pies or 3 cakes worth of dessert. My parents also stay over to help prepare and cook, and we all contribute to the washing and cleaning. We haven't spoken in 2 months because of this. Your sister is pretty presumptuous to invite 50 people over to your house and pretty bold to call you an a-hole when the recipient of 50 unwanted people says no. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.